What if I told you that our history books are missing a huge chapter? We're talking about a massive, technologically advanced empire that once spanned pretty much the entire globe, only to be deliberately erased. Today, we're diving deep into the theory of the Tartarian Empire.
So, this whole thing kicks off with one gigantic, unsettling question. What if a global civilization, maybe even more advanced than we are today, just vanished from the historical record? That's the core idea we're exploring, the lost empire of Tartaria.
Now, this doesn't just start with speculation. It starts with something you can actually see and touch: old maps. For centuries, we're talking from the 1500s all the way to the 1800s, map makers from all over drew this massive territory called Tartaria. And look at it. This wasn't some tiny kingdom. This was a sprawling empire that covered most of Asia.
Just look at this timeline. For over 300 years, the best cartographers in the world consistently drew Tartaria on their maps. And then, poof, sometime in the 1800s, it just starts disappearing. An entire empire literally wiped off the map. You have to ask, why?
What's really strange is that right around the time Tartaria vanishes from maps, something else starts appearing all over the world. These incredibly grand, ornate buildings, supposedly built on timelines that just seem, well, impossible.
This is where the official story starts to feel a little thin. You've got San Francisco rebuilt at lightning speed after the 1906 earthquake. You've got Chicago's massive World's Fair in 1893, supposedly built from scratch in just 2 years. And it's not just the speed, it's the style. This exact same grand neoclassical architecture pops up in cities across the entire globe almost overnight.
To really get a sense of how wild this is, let's just stick with the Chicago World's Fair. We're talking about a 600-acre complex with more than 200 enormous, incredibly detailed buildings. I mean, even with today's technology, that is a monumental job.
And to put that scale into perspective, listen to this. Just one building, the manufacturer's building, was so big you could have put the U.S. Capitol, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and a few cathedrals inside it, with room to spare. And we're told this was all built with 1890s tech in less than 2 years? It just doesn't add up. So this leaves us with two totally different stories. The official story says, oh, these were just temporary buildings, like a movie set, made of plaster and meant to be torn down. But the theorists say, no way. Why would you go to all that trouble just to destroy it? Their idea is that these buildings were already there. They were ancient Tartarian structures that were just cleaned up for the fairs and then deliberately destroyed to hide the truth.
So, what happened to this incredible old world? Well, according to the theory, the evidence wasn't just torn down. It was buried by a cataclysmic event that changed the face of the planet. This event is what proponents of the theory call the Great Mud Flood. The idea is that a massive global cataclysm happened sometime in the 19th century, burying entire cities in feet or even dozens of feet of mud. This reset the ground level, leaving only the tops of these giant old buildings poking out. And the evidence, they say, is hiding in plain sight. I mean, think about it. Why do so many old buildings have windows right at sidewalk level, or doors that open up to a 10-foot drop? You've got places like the Seattle Underground, which are literally entire city blocks that were buried and built on top of. It really does look like our modern world is built on the ruins of an older, buried one.
So again, you've got two competing stories. The mainstream view says that street levels just rise slowly over hundreds of years as cities are rebuilt. It's a gradual process. But theorists argue that a slow process doesn't explain how entire first floors get buried uniformly in cities all over the world at roughly the same time. To them, it has all the hallmarks of a single, devastating flood.
Okay, so if this empire really did exist, how in the world did they build all this stuff? The theory's answer lies in lost technology, specifically a concept that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction: free atmospheric energy.
Take a look at these star forts that you can find all over the world. The history books tell us they were military fortifications designed to deflect cannonballs. But theorists look at their incredibly precise geometric designs and see something totally different: massive energy devices built not for war, but to literally pull power out of the air. And this idea doesn't stop with the forts. It extends to the great cathedrals and the old Capitol buildings. You know how they have incredible acoustics? Well, the theory goes that those acoustics weren't just for making a speech or a choir sound good. They were functional. These buildings were supposedly giant resonance chambers designed to amplify sound frequencies to do actual work.
maybe even to levitate the massive stone blocks they were built with.
And that right there, that's the motive, isn't it? I mean, just think about it. If a civilization had mastered clean, free energy, it would completely upend our modern economy, which is based on oil and paid electricity. Is that kind of paradigm-shifting knowledge worth hiding from the rest of us? So we have a lost empire, impossible architecture, and technology that could change the world. But the theory takes one more absolutely incredible turn when it asks, who were the Tartarians themselves?
The answer, according to the theory, is as simple as it is shocking. They were giants.
And they say the evidence for this is all around us. First, you've got the architecture itself. Why are the doorways in these old buildings consistently 12, 15, even 20 feet high? The stairs, the ceilings, everything is oversized. Second, you have all these reports from 19th century newspapers about giant skeletons, 7, 8, 9 feet tall, being dug up all over the place. Skeletons that have all mysteriously vanished. And finally, you have the myths. Nearly every culture on Earth has stories of giants. Maybe they're not myths. Maybe they're memories.
And this is where all the pieces of the puzzle click into place. It leads to one final, explosive conclusion, that the disappearance of Tartaria wasn't some historical accident. It was a deliberate, coordinated, global cover-up.
Theorists call this the Great Reset. Not the one you hear about in the news today, but an older, more destructive one. The idea is that a series of catastrophes in the 19th and 20th centuries were engineered to wipe the slate clean, destroy the last physical evidence of Tartaria, and install the new version of history that we all learn in school.
When you start to look at history through that lens, all these big disasters, they stop looking so random. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, even the World Wars. Suddenly they can be seen as targeted events, perfectly designed to wipe out the old world cities and architecture. You know, one of the most haunting pieces of evidence comes from old photographs of these grand cities. They're just empty. Now, the conventional explanation is long camera exposure times. But theorists ask, where are the blurs? There should at least be blurry shapes of people or carriages moving. Instead, you have these pristine, yet ghostly and empty cities. They see this as proof of a world that had been wiped clean and was only just beginning to be repopulated.
So, what are we left with? Are these all just disconnected anomalies, weird coincidences that conventional history can explain away? Or are they pieces of a much larger puzzle? Clues that point to an advanced global civilization, a race of giants with free energy who were systematically and deliberately erased from our world? That's the question this theory leaves us with.